we don't want any of our guests to feel strange about hugging us. You know what I mean? And hugging others and just dancing with whoever you want to dance with on the dance floor, not having any qualms about it, and not worrying about like your grandmother or your aunt or anybody that might have an autoimmune disease, or what won't be allowed until much later this season is coming from the catering end are buffets and family style. Uh, can you just imagine going leaving COVID-19 and
I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Wedding Workshop Podcast. I'm your host, Gene, the wedding coach. The purpose of the show is to help engage couples plan a fun, entertaining, most importantly, stress-free wedding. I'm super excited to have Erin on this episode with
super excited to be here.
Yep, you're the boss weddings and events. I think that you're one of the number one catering companies in the Hudson Valley area. You do a lot of events. I know you have an enormous amount of information and knowledge when it comes to doing weddings. Before I kind of bend, Erin, do you want to kind of let everybody know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Erin Pascual. I own a company called You're the Boss Weddings and Events. I've been in this industry now 16 or so years. I've owned restaurants. I've bartended at high volume bars and restaurants. I've maitre d' down in the city. I've worked and managed hotels. So I've definitely done every aspect of hospitality and had this business since 2014, but completely solely focused on this for exactly 2 years now.
So, Erin, my first question, right?
Sure.
What advice would you have for couples trying to plan their wedding, during this COVID-19 situation that we're in?
Well, I would say if you already had a date planned for 2020, you just have to be realistic with it. And just, there's a lot of guidelines coming out. I would say weddings, private events, we're in phase 4, which is not necessarily written yet. Bars and restaurants are phase 2, phase 3, but there's going to be a lot of, guidelines and rules, and you obviously want your guests safe. You want yourself safe, and I've done well over 500 weddings at this point, and it's very hard to fathom a wedding where you might have to wear a mask, or rules such as dancing 6 feet away from somebody, and that obviously affects the DJs and yourself, and you're going to hear a lot of what may seem crazy rules coming out. But just to kind of be patient with it, talk to your vendors, see what the best place to take it. I have a ton of clients who are post, and I also have a ton of clients who are still getting married on their day, but going much smaller and then doing a big party next year. I am officially an officiant of weddings now, so I've been able to kind of navigate that and to be able to make sure that my clients still get married this year and then do the big party that they want next year.
So you were talking a little bit about phase 4. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Sure. So phase 2 and 3 are basically restaurants and bars opening, with restaurants going first and then the bar service going second. Within each bar and restaurant, they have their own level of phases. So for example, phase 1 of a restaurant opening at phase 2, it gets a little confusing, but phase 1 would be like, you can eat at a restaurant, but you only eat with people that you've been sheltering in place with. Tables are 6 feet apart. Your servers are only at your table very quick to just drop off the food and go back. You can't, at this part in time, you won't be able to actually sit at a bar yet and be in front of a bartender. You can order your drink, get your drink, and go to a specific seat for yourself. The phase 2 of that is, having people at your table, more than 6 people, possibly eating with someone you haven't sheltered with, like a friend or people you haven't seen in a while. Uh, Eventually it's going to get back up to the point where we can have private events, starting right now. You can only have a gathering for less than 10 people. It's going to eventually get, 20, 25, 50, 100. Who knows at this point right now when they're going to be able to let, like, I've got weddings where there's 250 people. It all is going to be based on the scientific data that comes back from all of their research and all of the cases at that given time. So there's really never going to be like, on this day we're gonna let people hang out more than 50 to 100 people. They're not going to release that right now. They're going to kind of wait every few weeks till we can eventually get back to some sort of normalcy.
So how do you think wait, let me back up a little bit. So because you said a lot there, right? So
Yeah.
so I'm assuming that the way we shut down is the way we're going to open up, right? So
Oh, absolutely. Right
like,
before we shut down, it was, I think we were nobody more than 50 people. Then it went down to, I think, 20. And then within a couple of days, it went down to 10. So yeah, it's just basically a reversal of things. Restaurants are going to go open back up at like 25% capacity, then based on their the zoning capacity, how many people you can fit in there, and then go to 50% capacity, and then eventually move their way up to what they consider full capacity.
So with that being said, peak season for wedding for us would be like summertime, right? We're in May now, and then you've got fall, which is, I would say, I think is like the number one season for
Yeah,
weddings.
in
Now you
Hudson
gotta,
Valley, fall is the number one wedding season. It's tough to say because fall is also the start of another flu season, like the normal flu season up here. Yeah, I would say between March and October of this year, I've already had over 120 events reschedule or cancel.
wow.
That's just, it's the name of this industry. Like I typically do about 100 weddings and about another 1,000 non-weddings. But I've never experienced like numbers or phone calls where like we're gonna have to, because a lot of people are scared. And then I've got a ton of people who are booking for 2021 now, and they're unaffected by anything. Like, let's just plan, and that's great. A lot of people are still being incredibly optimistic. A lot of people who have planned for this fall are, they're in the mindset like, we don't want any of our guests to feel strange about hugging us. You know what I mean? And hugging others and just dancing with whoever you want to dance with on the dance floor, and not having any qualms about it, and not worrying about like your grandmother or your aunt or anybody that might have an autoimmune disease, or what won't be allowed until much later this season is, coming from the catering end, are buffets and family style. Can you just imagine going, leaving COVID-19, and now we have to, 150 people have to go on a buffet and share the same like service, or a family style where you're just passing plates from one person to the next. So there's definitely going to be mandates on that, and coming from the catering end, which is, my best friend is a buffet. So, like so it's, every caterer's like best scenario is a buffet. And, it's a lot more manpower, a lot more cost to go on a plated dinner. But if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do.
So that you kind of are leading into my second question, because that is going to be, how do you see the catering industry changing post-COVID, right? So you said, as far as there are definitely going to be guidelines regarding family style and buffet. Now, have those guidelines come out yet, or are they still kind of?
So right now I work with, or I've been working with a few different venues who are like experts at this and who, do the catering every day. We've been all working together on documents to send to Albany about, because we live this stuff. If we can get ahead of it And if we can help write the rules, then it's going to be a little bit easier than being told that this is what we have to do when it's not necessarily how we run things every single day. And, we want to make sure that if everybody else is on the same guidelines, it's going to be a lot easier to open. And even though, venues might be in competition with each other, this is the time where we've all banded together. We just want, the events to come back, and we want everyone to get back into the jobs. And because if you can imagine, like a place like Anthony's Pier 9, how many people they employ, they want to get, how much food do they output in a day? They want to get back into that, because if they're open and they're functioning, the rest of the economy is opening and functioning.
So can you elaborate a little bit on, the market opens back up slightly, right? Slowly.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I was talking to a couple yesterday, and they were telling me, they were like, Gene, I think our guest list is going to get cut to 50 people.
Mm-hmm. I've been seeing a ton of that.
And so, they're like, we don't want to uninvite people. So they're kind of like waiting to see what the governor does. And this is in Virginia, of course, right? We're in New York, so it's a little bit different. But, just to think that, couples, you may only be allowed to have 50 people in a venue. Like, how do you kind of navigate through that?
Exactly. And obviously it changes your whole floor plan. It changes. I think venues have to kind of get ahead of that thinking. And, I'm sure a lot of venues already have their dedicated minimum, where maybe the minimum is 75 people. And then what are you going to do? Like, if the governor says 50 and these people still want to get married, are you going to charge them for 75? I hope not. I hope that venues, they have to realize that you kind of have to give a little bit more to get a lot more in return. And, you have to put on the best event possible for a couple that did not see this coming, and, that still want to have the event possible. I know a lot of venues out there have struggled with people rescheduling and then, changing their dates and then lowering their minimums and still charging them for the max amount they could possibly have. I know someone who, was still having a wedding right before everything shut down. The minimum was, I believe, 150 people on a Saturday at that time. Maybe 60 people showed up. They were charged for whatever, the 170 or 100.
Wow.
150, yeah. So, you could make or break in this industry based on any single choice you make. And
reputation is big in this industry. Reputation is big. It's a small community. So you being the expert, let me ask you, how do you envision your first wedding, right? Like, do you see it being 50 people? Let's just say 75, right?
Well, I will tell you that so our first wedding this season was scheduled for May 8th. Obviously that's come and gone and it has not happened. They rescheduled for later in the year. I would say our next wedding scheduled to be like what hopefully is over 100 people, I think, is late August. I think that group is starting to base the decision on what happens next week in the state of New York. But I will tell you, my first wedding of the season will actually be on May 29th. It wasn't a scheduled wedding to begin with. They were scheduled to get married June 20th, and it was supposed to be a big wedding at their home. So now that they've changed everything around, and it's only going to be 5 people, and I'm actually officiating and making the cake, where I was, just supposed to be like decorating or something like that and doing the cake as well. And we're just going to make the best of it. And, you find out a lot of people, I mean, when you go through something like COVID-19, you find out from a lot of couples what really means the most to them with their wedding. And you'll find that, hey, we're willing to wait, or we want to get married right away, and we don't care about all the bells, the whistles, we just want to be together. So you're seeing some really good types of people. Thankfully, I haven't seen the type of that could possibly come out where they're like, this all happened and I want everything exactly the same as, and my wedding date better still happen as it is. I thankfully have not seen that. I think people are starting to experience different scenarios. A lot of my clients, I would say half of them are from the Hudson Valley. I've got some in Colorado, California, a lot in New York City. And obviously the ones in New York City are seeing the brunt of this. And they're like, we're willing to wait. Let's just move this to a time where we can all celebrate. Where, people for the most part live together already. So they're kind of already married in that sense. So they're looking forward to they just want friends and family together. You see all the things that, like I said, you see all the things that they once wanted, all the bells, the whistles, and they're like, you know what, we just want to have a good time. Thankfully, I get a lot of clients like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
but, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Erin. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, what I've definitely seen is nobody wants a wedding where everyone has to wear a mask, where, you only can dance with the person you live with. They want to cut a rug on the dance floor. They want to, I'm sure you as a DJ want to see people go crazy on the dance floor. And you want to be able to go to an event where there's no over looming rules, or you're afraid that someone from the venue is going to be like, oh, you can't do that, you must be dancing, that can't happen. It's the 20s, the 30s again. They don't want to go back to that.
A wedding, I look at wedding in three important things. Number one, friends and family.
Yep.
Number two, the food and alcohol. And number three, the music.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's the biggest things that create the atmosphere. And if they have to worry about any of that stuff and rules on top of that, I think it stresses people out.
And planning a wedding is already stressful, right? It's already, time consuming, and a lot of logistics involved, a lot of money that's invested. And some of the couples that I've talked to that's pushed their wedding back to 2021, they're like, Gene, listen, my stress level has like gone way down, right? Because I'm not trying to worry and maneuver and try to, who's coming, who can't come. And so, it's something for couples to really think about, right? Like, if you want to reduce your stress. I've had some couples, right? Yesterday I was talking to a couple, they already got married, right? So they're already married. That part's already done with, right? They moved their wedding back. And so now, that once again, that stress level is not there. That
they're
anxiety
just till the day.
is not there. Yeah, they're just trying to make it through. So I'm trying to get like a visual picture, right? So your first wedding comes out. You said phase 4. Obviously, phase 4, they're not going to say, okay, 150 people, right?
Yeah.
It'll probably be like, I don't know. Let's just make up a number. Let's just say 50, right?
Yeah.
And once again, where this is an assumption, right? It's not a fact, but let's just say 50 people. Right. So, do you envision tables being 6 feet apart, like like they're doing with the bars? So kind of walk me through, what you.
So I envision tables still being 6 feet apart, which isn't that hard in a venue space. Like, you're in a space that's meant to be, let's say, 250 people, and the government will roll back that number. So if it's a space meant for 250 people, like what I typically do over at Otterkill, I would say then they would say your max capacity is 50. But if you have that square footage, you can really like nicely fill a room without it being too awkward. You definitely don't need something so abrasive as, putting markers on the floor, like tape markers, and be like, okay, this is where this table goes. You can kind of make it look really elegant still. And probably less people at each table, so that, no more tables of like 16 where the long tables are until you get a little later into the year. Probably like 10 or less, or even 8 would be feasible. And, if you think about a wedding anyway, and I do a lot of seating and floor plans, you're putting people together who normally would either live together, know each other, siblings, aunts, uncles, or coworkers, or something like that. Here's where we might have to tweak things a little bit, you know, especially if obviously if they're coworkers, they probably haven't been working with each other for a few months now. But if people are back in the office together at that point, depending on your job, then it's not going to be so bad, you know.
Now,
And
now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, so what I'm saying, who knows what the mandatory like mask wearing might be. Obviously, there are no masks when it comes time to eat. So I think it's
I didn't even think about that. You could put
yeah,
a hole in the mask, though. You could put a.
yeah.
It's not
That's
gonna
probably
work.
gonna be a
It's not
no.
gonna work.
You know, and eating and drinking and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
think it'll just be, you know, you kind of have to roll with the punches. Or if you just don't see this being, you know, not what you want, then, you know, there is no harm in moving things to next year. And hopefully your vendors hopefully you're working with a vendor who has a really good contract. And I would probably say that's been like a tough thing to swallow for a lot of vendors, because a lot of people didn't have, not us, but, you know, obviously I take on a lot of wedding planning clients, where all their other vendors don't have a clause in it about postponement or cancellations and stuff like that. So hopefully you have a really good team of vendors who know what they're doing and, you know, have those clauses in them, and then you could just move everything to the next year.
So, do you think venues would require people for them to get their temperature checked before they walk into the venue?
I know I know for the venues, it's more of it's ease of liability. Like there's not so that you just don't want someone to say, or like someone who was at your event saying, you know, I caught the coronavirus from that venue. You know,
Right.
you know what I mean? And I hate to say this, but in this day and age, people kind of just look for anything.
Right.
Not everybody, but there's always one in every couple
Group.
100,000. Yeah. Well, I don't want to say one in every group, but one in
Yeah.
every, you know, one in every bit. I know some restaurants already have in place or are going to have in place it's like lasers that kind of just scan someone as you walk in, so it's not so invasive. So it's not like someone, you know, holding like one of those temperature guns to your forehead or something like that.
Right.
And it just, there's a slight alarm that goes off if anyone has a fever. But the hard part about this thing is it's
Ooh.
like, you know, I mean, not like where it's not like, nah, you know, it's not like a huge alarm, but it show up on a screen, you know, like that person. And then, you know,
Right.
you hope that the world is adult enough to stay home if they don't feel well. And, you know, what's hard about this coronavirus is that a lot of it is asymptomatic, you know? So is temperatures enough? I don't know, you know? But I know that if a venue or even a vendor is taking the right precautions and taking their own temperatures and just kind of, you know, wearing gloves when they need to, wearing masks when they need to, I think the liability is just a little bit less. As long as they, you know, have their own practices, I think that should be enough for now.
I mean, I would imagine that the venues and catering halls would definitely at least want to test their employees that are working.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, because viruses can spread through handling of food, and, you know, we all know that. You know,
So,
tough out there.
so let's switch a little bit and talk about budgeting
Sure.
for a caterer, right? So, your average wedding, and it's a little bit different in New York than it is in Virginia. New York, what would you say the average wedding is in New York? 150, 200?
Are we say like guest count or price per
Yes.
person? Guest
Guest
count,
count.
I would say like 150. Yeah.
And so what should a couple expect, or what should they budget for? And I know it depends on the type of food that they get, right? But like realistically, because I know the venue and the food will take up most of your budget.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, because like we were talking about the big things, like the venue, the food, and the music are, I would say, the most important. and because it
And the
covers,
photographer, we can't
yeah,
forget our photographers. I mean,
yeah. The photographers are important. I have a ton of photographer friends, but they are very much a personal choice, I think. I'm saying, well, I'll go back to this. So photographers, videographers, photo booths, vendors like that. I know a lot of people change in budget. I'm a huge fan of having all three, but I think what makes the atmosphere the best is the first three, like the venue, the caterer, and the music. So what I've seen the trend where people are spending, they're covering those bases, and when it comes to photography and videography, it's tough because what you consider an amazing photographer, the next person may have a different view because it's just all about how you perceive your pictures to be. If you can, and I always tell my clients, look at their pictures, stalk these photographers. If you can envision your wedding photos to look like that, and for you and your fiance to look like that, because there's different filters, there's different lightings, and you also have to really get along with and be really comfortable with a photographer because they are in your face all day long. And same thing with the videographer. If you can do this, then I think you should spend the money on it. I'm definitely against not for people who choose not to have a photographer. I voice my opinion. I'm like, do not do that. You have to have one. You're going to regret not having any photos of this day, even if it's candids and whatnot,
So regarding,
sorry, going back to the
no, you're good. You're good.
I would say, most venues around here are, I would say the average price per plate. Venues around here, and I have packages from every venue in Orange County because I have couples that get married in every venue in Orange County. I don't just do the catering, but I do planning as well. I would say they venture from like 100 to 200 plates. So let's just call it at 150 per person. Your budgets are different.
Yes.
It's a tough thing when you go to budgeting because you also have to be very real about your guest list. If you're
Right.
saying, I've got 250 people here, but I only have this certain amount of money to spend, so by that math, I can only spend $45 a plate. I'm gonna tell you,
not happening.
yeah, not happening. Exactly, because at the end of the day, you're still getting like all these courses. It's usually your venue and your catering also pays for the staff that has to work there, for the setup, the cleanup, for the linens, the person, the entire kitchen staff, the people who have to wash the plates, and people just don't realize that it definitely adds up. But I think you have to be really good with your guest list. Take out the people who you don't necessarily think about. I always tell clients, think about the first 50 people that you would definitely want at your wedding, and then go from there.
Yeah. It's amazing, Erin. Not only are you a caterer and an officiant, but then you also throw the wedding planning in there, right? So you kind of like.
I was always a wedding planner first. I started learning how to cook. So I kind of got that aspect. We also take care of flowers, full decor, stuff like that. So sometimes it's a little bit easier for clients to come to us because they can get 80% of their vendors all in one house. So it makes it easier, and especially with vendors too. Like, say if you come in as a DJ, do you want to deal with one person that takes care of like 90% of the things, or do you want to deal with 8 different vendors all across the board and a maitre d'?
Not at all.
Exactly.
So I got married at Falkirk 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy over there is great.
Yep.
And the staff over there is awesome. And, me and my wife quickly learned that, I think our guest list started at like 250. And after sitting down with Tommy, he was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be 175, 175 a person. We were like, oh, well, let's go back and kind of reevaluate.
Yeah.
who
Let's
who
go back
who's
to,
really
let's talk about
important.
people we haven't talked to in about 3 years, and then,
Exactly.
yeah.
Now, I will tell you, you know, Falkirk, they have in-house catering, and my guests were like so amazed with, they had a heavy cocktail hour,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the food just kept coming, but I didn't realize it, and we do things a little bit differently in Virginia. So that 175 does include an open bar, correct?
Yeah.
So that's already included in the price.
Yeah. And you got to figure, for some places that have to do it separately, there are places that are $20 a person, open bar for the 5 hours that you're there, 5.5 hours, and then there are some that will charge 30 per person per hour. So you kind of, yeah, there are some. You have to
Wow.
really, when you get packages, you have to literally tear it apart, ask any question possible. No question is a stupid question, and just especially when you want to move to a contract, you have to tear apart every sentence of that contract and have a lot of, what ifs, and a lot of, let's say this happens, how do you deal with that kind of thing. I go over contracts very thoroughly, with my clients, and I tell them, like, ask me any question from the top of your head. If not, I'm going to go through this and I'm going to bring up what other couples have brought up, and we'll go from there.
So let's talk about that menu a little bit.
Sure, absolutely.
What I've noticed is chicken, steak, and fish are, the most popular
Yep.
main courses. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think this day and age, you're going to see a lot of customization. A lot of people want their favorite foods in one way or another, whether it's a station, whether it's like a course added into it. Even though, yeah, chicken, fish, steak, those are your three main. Be prepared to see a lot of vegan, vegetarians, gluten-frees, non-dairy, non-wheat, non-soy, like we've seen it all kind of thing. I'm trying to think what else. We see, like, people love stations as far as, doing mashed potato bar, or doing like an entire seafood station, or just an Italian station. People want their wedding fully customized based on their favorite foods.
So I'm glad you brought that up, right? That wasn't even on my list of questions, but can you talk about the different styles of catering you could do? So you could do buffet, you could do plated, you could do family style, you could do stations. Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of people like to see live stations. So whether it's someone like an actual station of like a walk station cooking right in front of your guests, and you kind of cook everything, you par cook, and then you light it up right in front of your guests, and they form a line and they get a little piece of what everyone's making.
It's form of entertainment almost.
Yeah,
right? Like...
exactly. It's all the bells and whistles, and people like that. People want to be entertained.
Now, is there a difference in pricing if you do stations rather than
sit down
plated and
yeah? So
style?
typically, the pricing goes buffet, then stations, then sit down. And then actually, let me start over. Buffet, stations, sit down, family style. Because family style is basically just keep bringing food out, and as people are just sitting, and they can say at any time, "Give me more, give me more, give me more." Where plating is just a lot more service ended. So there's just, everyone gets what they've ordered, a full plate of that, and that's what it is. And then stations, even though they're on the buffet and stations, there's just a ton of food. It's not as heavy on the personal service. Even though they get service, they get the hospitality, you're going up to get the food. So nobody's necessarily like basically feeding you at your table. We see a lot more of that just because most couples have been a little more casual on what they want a big party. they've, I think, been to years and years and years of the super traditional sit down, and they want um, stations and buffet. There's just more food available to you, more food options.
Now, do you think that having a buffet style dinner and having a plated style dinner, does that affect the flow or the mood of the wedding?
Um, Sort of. I think the people who, and this is just my observation, the people who have been doing buffets and plated, or I'm sorry, buffets and stations
Stitches.
are also the same people who want to get out on the dance floor the first they can. They want to. They are high energy. They like to be moving around a lot. I see that with seated dinners. Depending on how many courses, you're just in your seats a lot longer.
Mm.
Um, then you're just too heavy to get up. You know what I mean? You've eaten too much. You're too heavy to get up. You got to loosen up a little bit. You got to take a little bit more time. And then you might not spend as much time on the dance floor as you want. So I've just seen a lot more energy from buffets and stations.
Now, the reason why plated dinner is more expensive is because you need more staff
More staff,
to.
and they do get a decent size, like a fairly large portion on each plate.
Mhm.
Um, but there's just, when you do a seated, there's more staff per person, per guest, than any other service, both front of the house, which is your like wait staff, and back of the house. So I actually need more staff in the kitchen to get those plates out,
Mm.
to make sure that each table gets the right amount of protein, starch, veg. Then the plate gets what we call wiped down, so it's perfect. And then in the shortest amount of time, that plate has to get to that table so that it stays hot.
So getting married in New York was a lot different. I've done hundreds of weddings in
Yeah, in
Virginia,
Virginia,
right?
based, yeah.
So I noticed that the cocktail hour was kind of the same, but when it came to the dinner, it was I guess the guests weren't as hungry because it was a heavy cocktail hour. I don't want to say heavy, but
Yeah,
it was
New
a heavy
York, we do
cocktail
a ton
hour.
of cocktail hours. So usually when I write the scripts for like the maitre d's and for the flow of the wedding, if there is a heavy cocktail hour, I make sure that there is a fairly decent dance set after the first dance, just to get them moving, because otherwise they're you want to see people dancing and eating and drinking the same amount, rather than eating, drinking, and then I got to deal with this later. So we
Yeah.
try to get them up and moving a lot.
So the flow was a little bit different where after cocktail hour, after the first dance is dancing, then it's dancing for like maybe 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Then they sit down, then you have the first course come
Well,
out.
so regardless of what happens, once they move from cocktail hour to the reception, as soon as they walk into the room, there is salad on the plate. But so we always make sure that there is food in front of them, no matter what. But it's their choice to take it. It's not, it's not a mandated sit down. Once the music up, we want people to have the option to keep moving, and we're not going to clear the food until they say it's okay to. We do see a lot of people like forego the salad just so they want to be out roaming around and whatnot. Um, if it's a traditional sit down, the salads will still be on it, but we'll clear for possibly another course before dinner. So it's just more attention to detail on the tables than anything.
And Tommy also served some, I don't know if it was sherbet, something to clean your palates,
Oh,
which I was
yeah,
completely, I was like, what?
intermezzo. Yeah, it's like a sherbet to cleanse your palate, and you're like,
Yes.
where half the people are like, why am I getting ice cream? And the other half
Right,
are
right.
like, why is this bitter? 'Cause it's usually like lemon. It's usually like something acidic, just to fully cleanse it, so that whatever you have for your entree doesn't taste like what you had on your first course.
Okay. So what should couples consider when investing in a catering company?
I think that you should definitely consider if your caterer is able to be customizable. If your caterer sticks to like one package and one package only, like this is what you get. I don't care what your favorite foods are. I'm not adjusting on price. I don't care that COVID-19 is happening and you both were, possibly unemployed. And, if your caterer doesn't make any considerations, I'm not saying they have to change the things, but if they don't consider anything, it just might not be the right caterer for anybody. You want your wedding to be as unique as yourself. So find someone that is going to, make your favorite foods, make this all about you guys, because, how many shots at this do we have? How much time,
True.
how much money, how much investment do we want to make in this caterer? Also, like, stalk them. I'm saying that in the nicest way possible. Stalk your caterers. If they're not on Instagram, if they're not on Facebook, how do you know what they can produce? You know what I mean? If they don't give back to communities, how do you know that they're, you want someone that's extremely well-rounded and is not in there just to make money. Find out the places that they've catered, find out the reviews that they had, find out where else that they're preferred vendors. Because if you're a preferred vendor from a venue, that means that that venue actually likes working with you. And it also shows that you have a range where you can cater outside, inside. They kind of like to know that you're willing to go the extra mile for their wedding and not just be there to throw food out and leave. You got to also know your caterers, up to standards. Are they clean? Are they knowledgeable about things? Are they willing to work with you on any of your ideas that you might have? I know caterers who are like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I myself are like, I will do anything you ask me to, as long as, we have a mutual understanding of respect, So you just have to kind of weed out a few people, do your research. Don't just go to a place because it's pretty. When you invest into a caterer or a venue, once you sign that contract, it's possibly you're working with them for anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Yeah. 6 months to a year. So you're gonna build a relationship with them, and you have to feel comfortable. If from the first moment you meet them, if you're like, I don't know, and then you continue, and you keep having that feeling, it's maybe shouldn't have ever happened. You know what I mean? I do enforce meeting your vendors, whoever they are, but definitely your caterer, face to face. And if you obviously can't do that during this time, have a video chat with them. You want to know that they're real, that they're like, I'm not saying that every caterer has to have a personality, but like I said before, you're going to have to deal with them for 6 to,
It
18
helps.
It helps if they have a personality, because then, you kind of get to know them on a little personal level. You have to also know that they're reachable. If, whether it's by email, by text, by phone, however, but you got to know that they're available to answer any questions. I know some people who are like, put rules on, you can only contact me during these hours, during this time, and we can only meet for 3 times before the wedding.
Oh my God, it's not going to work for,
Yeah.
I mean.
Exactly. There are people out there like that. There are, and it's crazy. You have to also know what gets included. Like if there's linens, if there's beverages, if there's like any decor, if there's a maitre d', if what. You have to make sure that your vendors, regardless of who they are willing to go the extra mile for you on your wedding day. Because if you get that treatment, you know that everybody else along the line is. And, I think a lot of people operate on word of mouth now. So you just have to make sure, like we were talking about, reputation is the biggest thing. And
Yes.
you gotta always put your best foot forward and see what comes out from there.
So a catering company may do several weddings in a day, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you try not to. It gets exhausting. Like from a caterer's point of view, I'm like, the sheer thought of that is just like, I try not to. The only time I may is if the 2 people that ask just happen to be very close friends, and I'll have one team there and I'll have another team another place, and I just do my best to go in between, and I plan everything to a T, and I go over everything with both teams very carefully so I can seamlessly go. There are venues that can do up to 3 events a day, and there are venues who say not only 1 wedding a day but 1 event per day. try to stick with something like that, just so that you have time to even and to drop off your stuff, your decor. A lot of people in this day and age are doing DIYs, like storage facilities full of them that they bring to the wedding venue for that day. So you want to make sure that like you're not just another part of the puzzle, like a part of the day puzzle, that
Right.
your vendors are, especially your venue and your caterer, are going to take the time to meet with you, to answer all your questions, to set up the stuff that you want, and hopefully it doesn't leave you and your parents and your maid of honor and bridesmaids to do it all and whatnot for you.
So is that important? Is that an important question to ask? How many
Yes.
weddings are you doing in a day?
Yeah. And it's also important to say, like, I do know a venue that does a lot of weddings in a day, and they are a powerhouse in this industry. But they are the same venue that will say, if you have any decor, like personalized menus or centerpieces or things that have to go on the tables, we are not going to touch any of that for you. So your family members have to do it the day of, because we are not touching that. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And there are people like I will like, yeah, bring it all to me. I will set it up. I know how it's supposed to look. I can take care of that. I have a floral background, so if any centerpieces are like looking weird right before the wedding, I'll fix things. Sometimes they say no just for like liability issues, and just
Mm.
because they don't want to be held accountable if they do something that the couple doesn't like. But to say no, that you're not even going to try, is you're already cutting yourself off.
Right, right, right. Which is, that's why you should hire a planner.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and, and
Exactly.
and and outsource that to the planner and not even have to deal with it. So with that being said, right? I know some venues have preferred vendors, uh, some preferred catering vendors, and some venues require that you use, I guess, their vendors or their catering,
Hmm.
rather than going outside. Can you talk
Yeah, I mean,
about the
there's
difference?
obviously plus and minuses to it. If a venue is saying that you prefer their caterer, maybe because it's the best situation there is for that specific venue. If they're saying you must use this DJ and must use this caterer, that's kind of like a lot. Just because, what if you don't fall in love with the preferences of any of those vendors, but you
Right.
but you absolutely love the venue? I will tell you that there's a million venues out there. So find the ones where you can bring your favorite vendors in one place, and don't get hung up on like the venue of your dreams, because there's probably another one coming up in another 2 months in this area. um, I think what makes the best wedding is if you have all your favorite vendors in one place, because they're all going to cohesively work together. But that's not to say, if there's a venue that says use our caterer, use it, try them out, see how it is, and see where you're willing to make compromises here and there.
And the reason I bring it up, some venues won't allow you to bring in your own caterer. It's not.
Yeah,
It's
which
not.
which
It's not an option.
I've been on the side of that, where I've catered for like specific families for years, and then they go to get married and they fall in love with the venue. They'll also still, most venues who don't allow other caterers will allow like cakes in from that from other venues, or allow you in some way to be present. If they do allow you in some way to be present, you just have to, as any business, have business liability insurance, and just a good track record. And like I said, if the couple really really wants you, they'll make a decision on it, and either have you involved maybe in the rehearsal dinner some way and some other venue,
Mm.
or choose a venue that works for everybody.
Now, why would a venue do that? You being a former,
Hmm.
restaurant owner, why would a venue not allow a couple to bring in their own catering vendor? Does it have to do with liability issues or
Yeah, there's a lot of
logistic
liability. There's
issues?
also reputation. So for example, I'm also the executive chef at Otter Kill Country Club, and
Okay.
yeah, so Otter Kill hires my company to produce all the events and to take care of all the food. This is the first year that we're doing all of the food. Every other year, we've just been producing events and writing the menus. So this is like a plan that's been in place for now 3 years. So to eventually, to take over and whatnot. So everything that I do is very calculated. And it just doesn't come out to the public till much later. So with Otterkill, we allow other caterers if it's a food that I do not specialize in. And I'm very understanding about that. So if they bring in say a dessert or something like that, yeah, that's fine, as long as the person who made it has liability insurance and is a professional. I'm probably going to say no to Aunt Becky's cookies, because this day and age, if someone gets sick from that, they're going to sue the venue, and they're going to say, well, I ate all the other courses, so it must be the venue, and then usually what would happen is the health department does an investigation and takes up a lot of our lives. But we've had a lot of weddings on premise that were Indian and Pakistani. So we allowed those caterers to come on site with all of their paperwork and gave them full access to the kitchen. Our staff was still here because a lot of those caterers don't have their own wait staff. So we would still serve all the food. They serve, they do all the cooking, and then we make sure that everything is still done to the standards, because at the end of the day, regardless of who's catering, the guests that leave are going to say, oh, they're still going to have opinion of the venue, and that's where the reputation lies.
So we're coming to the stretch, Erin. I know I've had you on here for 45 minutes, right? So when it comes to investing in a catering company, you have obviously the waiters, a bartender, an assistant, and then you as the head chef boss. Is that kind of the structure?
Yeah. So usually when I cater, I have on my staff a maitre d' so that I can fully stay in the kitchen, and my maitre d' is all eyes on the front of the house, is what we call it. They take care of the bridal party, the parents, and just make sure that everybody is being taken care of completely. I work out timing with that person. So if, for example, that maitre d' work with you, which I'm sure you're very experienced with working with maitre d's at different venues, but if the bride and groom need 10 extra minutes before they get announced, they're going to come to you, tell you they need a little bit more time. So maybe just keep playing music, and then I'll come get you.
Right.
Yeah, so that you're prepared for it. And then they'd run to me and say, the bride and groom need 10 extra minutes to hold off on the first course. That's where the communication is. So I can direct an entire wedding for X amount of hours without even leaving the kitchen, because I just will know what's happening based on the staff that I hire. But yeah, it's usually the kitchen, myself and the kitchen staff and all the support staff for that. The maitre d' and captain, and then the service staff from there. So the waiters, the bussers, runners, bartenders, and whatnot. So it's usually a team of at least 20 people that put it together on my end. Yeah.
Or just the catering end.
Just on the catering. Yeah.
20 minimum. 20 minimum. Oh, probably 20. God.
If the wedding's under 50, we're going to be a little less.
Right. So for couples that are listening that are not in the New York market, what's a maitre d'? They're probably
so maitre d' is another word for event coordinator. So basically the maitre d' not only makes sure that the bride and groom or the couple, married couple, gets everything that they need and want, but also make sure that your bridal party is attended to, that both sides of the parents are attended to, that also make sure, it's a tough job, that make sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be. If the maid of honor is just, talking a lot at the bar and she's got a speech in 6 minutes, that maitre d' be you got 6 minutes up, please prepare yourself. Please stop taking those shots.
Right.
we need to get you up to the, to get ready for your speech kind of thing. Or to grab the father of the bride and say, 2 minutes till you're dancing with your daughter, stuff like that. And they're also, that person's okay, your boutonniere is wilting a little bit. Let me fix it. Let me hold your bouquet so I can help walk you to this for your photos. So everyone communicates with the maitre d'. Maitre d' is pretty much the boss of the front of the house. So they're visible at all times, there to help you no matter what.
So what separates your company from other catering companies in the Hudson Valley? Because you're just killing it. You're rocking.
I would say that I'm deeply personal, without being too personal, for example. I would say, the first week of COVID-19, we contacted every single client that we had. It took us a couple days, but we got through our entire list and said, this is what's happening. This is what's happening in New York right now. We're here. Call us at any time. This is what we foresee. This is what we hope doesn't happen, but please be prepared for a plan B. We don't know how long this is going to last. I think I had my messages out there before any shutdown happened. So my clients were pretty knew up front of any certainty. And, we were answering emails and questions and video chats. Like we've still been doing it around the clock just so that they're not lost. Because in this time, it's really easy for vendors to just disappear. So we didn't want to be that. I've had a lot of talks with a lot of clients and just kind of, assuring them I'm the type of person that if you need to reschedule this, yeah, it's going to hurt my business, but I'm not here for that. We're here for you guys. I pivoted my company in a way where we were just private caterers, but now we're doing meals to go during the week, and that has completely sustained us. So we're here for the clients and no matter what, and getting meals to wherever they need to be.
That's awesome, by the way.
Thank you. So I think that what makes me different is that I, answer people and I'm there for them, and, whatever random question they could have. I get texts as early as 6:00 in the morning. I get texts as late as 1:00 in the morning from people who are worried about their events. It's usually followed by let's talk in a few hours. But I'm there and I'm answering it.
Let me get my coffee first.
Yeah. So I'm ready for these, to answer them. But yeah, it's just all about being there for them. I think, like I said, I know a lot of vendors that disappeared on a lot of my clients just, because they were worried about, if they have to give back deposits or if people cancel altogether, what kind of job that they have. And I think our job was always for the clients. And, regardless of what happens, you'll always find a way to make things work. Yes. And I think that is kind of what separates me from others. I'm willing to work with anybody, especially I don't just shut out any other vendors. So I've always made that pretty clear. If your vendors need to chat with me on stuff, I'm definitely here for any advice or just to kind of work through the process to make sure that our mutual clients are having the best time.
So last question, Erin. Sure. How does somebody book your services?
Oh, so just give me a call. So it's 845-551-5760 is my phone. Text is the easiest, only because I'm usually in the kitchen and need both hands. And I'll get back to you.
You haven't mastered the one-hand cooking yet?
Yeah, no, I haven't mastered that. Maybe next week. We'll see. I got some time now. Working on it. Email. They can go right on the website, see my stuff. It's www.ytbevents.com, and just go through there. Instagram and Facebook is the same, at YTB Events.
So first step, get in contact with you, set up an appointment.
Yep.
Once the appointment is set, then you guys will discuss.
I'll go through the entire menu, how things work. I do a ton of payment plans based on their financial situation. So if some people like to pay as if it's a rent check, so once a month, so that by the time it comes to the week of the wedding, they're not handing out 8,000 large checks for all the vendors. Yeah. So we're very flexible, And
when it comes to your packages, not only catering, but also decor, wedding planning,
florals,
the officiant in there.
Officiant. I will stress that I prefer to officiate once I get to know you. So don't, it's not, right off the bat. It's typically, I did it typically, or I decided to be efficient for those clients who during this time couldn't get, they can't get married in churches, they can't get married in places that they want to, but they know they want to get married right then and there. So it's just to help them out. But I'm here I'll marry anyone over there, outside.
So Erin, any last words for the couples?
I would say just, take a deep breath, take your time, really figure out what it is that you want to represent yourself at your wedding. Whether it's your favorite foods, whether it's your favorite colors, whether it's that, know that anything is possible. If you you just have to find the right vendors to make sure that it all happens. And don't stress out. I mean, it's going to happen no matter what, but like I said, if you find the right vendors, you're going to be doing the least amount of work.
Erin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're the boss wedding and events. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Super excited to work with you in the future.
Absolutely.
And listen, we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna come across on the other side. All right. Thank you, Erin. I appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.
Take care. All right. Bye bye.